From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined as always with our super producer, Alexis the Brit Jackson. Most importantly, you are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. Fellow conspiracy realists, longtime listeners, it feels so great to be back now. Like, hopefully, the majority of America, we took Juneteenth off. We treated it as the holiday it deserves to be treated as, and as a result, we had a couple of classic episodes in place of our Strange News and Listener Mail programs last week. We hope you enjoyed them, and we hope they freaked you out as much as they freaked us out when we recorded them.
Back in 1947.
Yes, as the human calendars reckon. We have a lot of cool stuff to get to because, well, I say cool. It's interesting stuff. It is strange news. And what we found was that, weirdly enough, last week when we were going to, previously on Stuff They Don't Want You to Know, when we were going to record strange news, we had a bevy, a literal cavalcade of different stories. A lot of things happened in the interim between our time now and our time then, and we cannot wait to share them with you.
And the good news is some of them have developed even further since that time, and others have just remained delightfully evergreen.
We'll get into brain rot. We'll get into corporate medical malfeasance. We'll get into so many things, including our buddies at the Pentagon. For now, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about our buddy Julian, who's going home. All right, Julian Assange, if you know this show, if it is not your first time listening to Stuff They Don't Want You to Know, then you know the story of Julian Assange quite well, the creator, the originator of the world-changing online resource known as WikiLeaks. Now, we talked about Julian in the past. We have not spoken directly to him, just to be clear. We know that he spent some time in a little bit of a legal pickle, a bag of diplomatic badgers.
Sort of like a diplomatic limbo. A lot of treadmilling, right? Didn't he have a cat at some point?
Yeah.
Like an emotional support cat?
Yeah, so Julian Assange fundamentally changed the actions of nation states, arguably radicalized and informed many public populations across the planet. He was also being hunted by Uncle Sam as a result of his release of diplomatic cables that arguably endangered the lives of U.S. service members. And particularly, he may have played a role in the outcome of some U.S. elections by not all the secrets he was given from folks across the world, but from his curation thereof, the stuff he decided to leak versus the stuff that he withheld.
Yeah, he's a complicated figure, like a lot of the figures we talk about on this show, because without him, the American public, us, everyone wouldn't have known about a great many things, right? Or at least without someone who took the actions that he chose to take. So but it's weird.
But inherent in that, though, the choice, right, Matt, there is, in the complexity, there is like sort of a potentially problematic angle to this guy, that he has like an agenda and isn't just out there for the pure, proliferation of truth and justice, right?
Yeah.
What? No way.
Yeah. But and weirdly enough, the reason why he's getting out is because he has been I was going to use the word suffering, but he has been in captivity of one form or another for a long time, whether it was by choice, right? Or because he had to stay somewhere.
Right. He was in the liminal space of embassy grounds. As we all know, fellow nerds, embassy grounds are kind of like free ports in that they are technically the soil of the country running the embassy. So Ecuador helped him out. He got arrested on April 11th, 2019. He went to one of the crappiest prisons in the United Kingdom, Belmarsh. There's a reason that people write about it. And he now recently, this is the breaking news. He waited. I want to be careful how I say this. He waited for some scandals, the cycle of scandals and outrage to circle through, a real wheel of time kind of thing with the amount of attention people give to news. He pled guilty to espionage in U.S. courts to the Department of Justice, essentially, and now he is released. Released. Yeah. He is a free man in returning to Australia post haste. Texted you guys as soon as the news broke publicly. I think he made a deal. He did.
Well, he made some kind of deal because they gave him time served. They said, you've spent 5 years behind bars already, so get out of here. And he went straight to, how do you say the capital of Australia? Canberra?
Canberra. It's like saying Canberra. Yeah.
But it was crazy to watch footage of him just walking into an airplane.
It was good.
We've been watching him since what, 2007 maybe?
Yes.
I mean, like we've made videos on him. Some of the first videos we did were about not about WikiLeaks in particular, but about people who were whistleblowers, and he was one of the top guys.
It is interesting how, like, when a government does what Assange did, it's good tradecraft or what have you. Like it's part of the business of intelligence. But when someone like Assange does it and runs afoul of a government like the United States, it's essentially treasonous, or it's considered like almost an act of informational terrorism. And there's an article in the Wall Street Journal that would somewhat agree with that. It's headline: Julian Assange is no hero. A guilty plea might free him, but remember why the U.S. pursued him.
Yeah, let me give us the statement from the U.S. district judge who made this official, right? Made this legit. This U.S. district judge is Ramona Manglona, and she told Assange the following, quote, "With this pronouncement, it appears you will be able to walk out of this courtroom a free man. I hope there will be some peace restored with that, Mr. Assange. It's apparently an early happy birthday to you. I understand your birthday is next week. I hope you will start your new life in a positive manner." And it is true. Julian Assange turns 53 years old on July 3rd. So if you're hearing this, happy birthday, man. Birthdays are the only real New Year's. I walk down the street to continually diss the calendar.
No, I get it. He's one of those cats that's just had white hair like since forever, right?
Yeah, he's very Targaryen in that respect, sure which we talked about earlier.
A little megalomaniacal, too, like the Targaryen.
Again, complicated figure, but also perhaps the most interesting thing for those of us playing along at home tonight, wherever you find yourself in this wide world, is that he made a deal. He clearly made a deal. There was incentivization on both sides of the bargaining table. And the question we have to ask is, what did he give up? What did this great secret keeper, or this liberator of secrets, what did he give Uncle Sam in return for again, free life in Australia? All right.
Yeah. My hypothesis, they sat across the table and said, Julian, don't do this again. We're going to let you go. Don't do this again. And he's like, okay.
When they said, hey, Putin's not your friend. Also, maybe they played a little parody song like, there are 5 private eyes watching you.
Well, yeah.
At all times.
WikiLeaks had to completely shut down because of the intense surveillance that it was under. And the way they function is whistleblowers reach out to WikiLeaks. That's kind of how it all began. It was information gathering from individuals and groups who wanted to blow the whistle.
Self-selected, self-submitted.
Yep. They send the stuff to WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks uses whatever journalistic, parameters that they go by. And sometimes they would even link up with an outfit.
Sure.
An outfit like The Guardian or something like that. Connect with them. Then they release, like, what were we saying? Some small amount of whatever it is that they've been given. But
yes.
But those people who would be blowing the whistle didn't feel comfortable reaching out to WikiLeaks anymore because the government was peering over their shoulders at all times.
Because the interface got compromised.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, pretty early on. If we're talking about the just sheer amount of powerful actors who wanted control over that, right? They want to see the secrets. When people are shitty, they practice information asymmetry. You know, it doesn't matter if they're a government or a business or an individual. It is a hallmark of bad faith actors. So it's not.
What does that mean, though?
You like siloing information? Or?
Yeah. Information asymmetry in this case would be if you, like, imagine you got some boffins and they crack the code on WikiLeaks, right? The first thing you want is not to let WikiLeaks know it has been compromised. You want people to continue feeling safe, whispering their secrets into this ostensibly black box. And then you want to leverage that. And the next move would be to start sending fake information in there, right? To see how your adversaries will react. And I'm not being US centric when I say this. Any country, any institution would have taken advantage of this if possible. And then if things started to go sideways, they would spin out the conversation by saying, hey, we're just as surprised as you are. You know what I mean? We're just trying to get along with it. This Julian guy, he's crazy. There's still a lot of questions to be answered here, right? What is the nature of the deal? What is the information exchanged? What will the consequences be? But we do know people get up to shenanigans. Again, so much stuff happened this week. We're going to follow up on Assange, but we haven't even talked about the Pentagon getting busted on propaganda.
Oh, quick question on Assange, real quick, if you don't mind. Hasn't he been kind of out of the loop for a long time? Like, why would they be interested in information that he has? Would it still be relevant, or would it be some kind of something that he's been holding on to, or that he kept as some sort of insurance policy, or what? I know we don't know, but I mean, I'm wondering.
He's had a team of attorneys behind him since he's been in prison, right?
Since 2019.
Since he was arrested, and even before that, when he was in the embassy, people have been attorneys, like powerful, smart attorneys have been attempting to get him out of the situation. So I wonder if they're pulling levers as well.
Yeah. So to answer those questions, there are two things. First, in general, information is perishable, meaning,
That's what I was thinking.
You can know everything about what's going down in Basra in 2007, but does that matter in 2024? Right. The second thing is the idea of a dead man's hand, dead man's switch. This is often brought up in conspiratorial forms when we're talking about things like the death of Jeffrey Epstein, when we're talking about the evil and brilliant nuclear strategy of the former Soviet Union. It's kind of a, you can't fire me, I quit, and the building's burning idea. On an individual level, a dead man's hand is meant to, or dead man's switch is meant to function as a kind of insurance. We're going to talk about insurance later this week as well, in a different aspect.
Well, it's a way of like almost holding somebody hostage, or it's like a blackmail kind of opportunity, I guess. It's like dirt that if in the event that something happens to me, this will be triggered, and y'all who wish me harm are screwed.
So the primary concern there is that whatever this information may have been, it was enough to secure the safe international passage of a guy who will doubtlessly be followed for the rest of his life in ways that may be invisible to him even. And he's super smart.
Maybe he'll venture into the deep, deep, deep bush where some of these undiscovered cryptids are hanging out. Yeah. Have a hard time tracking him there.
Maybe he'll give some information on the Anti-Vaxx program that we have to get to. We missed you last week, folks. The news broke courtesy of Reuters. The Pentagon, which is housed in the world's largest office building. What a weird flex. They also no longer have a subway, which is a shame. But it turns out the news broke thanks to journalists Chris Bing and Joel Schechtman on June 14th, 2024, that the U.S. military launched a clandestine secret program that was an anti-vaccination disinformation campaign targeted at the nation of the Philippines and, to a smaller degree, people in the Filipino diaspora across the world. It was entirely meant to discredit the Chinese vaccination program for COVID-19. And it was sophisticated. It was organized. It was the kind of thing that you might associate with other adversarial countries. And it shows us an important lesson.
I guess my question is, to what end, as my question often is, just to smear them and embarrass them publicly? Or is there some actionable, next steps?
Wasn't it supposed to basically warn people against specific vaccinations coming out of China?
Yes. And the larger aim, the chess game of it, was meant to, it was an avenue of attack to diminish China's perceived growing influence on the Philippines, which are super crucial in that region, right? We know that China is, on a maritime level, super beefed up with pretty much every other country in Southeast Asia that has access to the Pacific Ocean, right? It's the China Sea. It's the South China Sea. And then other countries say, we never agreed to that. So the idea here from the Dr. Strangeloves of the United States was this would be a clever and cost-effective means of reducing Chinese influence on the nation of the Philippines. The concern being that if that Chinese influence grows past a certain threshold, the Philippines will become a vassal state, like Myanmar is a vassal state of China. So there was a greater good argument. There was a chess game, greater good argument for it, but it also probably cost some lives, just statistically, because they're telling people not to get vaccines.
Yeah. But think about all the people who didn't get those nanobots injected into them as a result of this campaign. I'm just joking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just joking.
Think about the people who are still immune to 5G, right? Shout out to our classic episode. This thing started in 2020. It went beyond Southeast Asia. That's what I mean when I'm talking about touching the diaspora. And it terminated officially in 2021, but they rolled out bot armies on X or on Twitter. They also had the thing you can see with a lot of bots, which is talking points slightly rephrased, super common on Reddit. What it shows us, oh gosh, we don't even have the time. I think this is an episode, my Spidey sense says, because we were talking off air about the idea of just quitting podcasting and joining the company responsible for this incredibly successful campaign. Let's just be honest. General Dynamics Information Technology. Look it up.
I could use a sexier name, but I bet they do good work.
We need innocuous names if we're up to shenanigans. Look it up. The other stuff we didn't get to, there is a Connecticut-sized dead zone that's coming out in the Gulf of Mexico, so be careful while you swim. California is fighting against hidden fees. Walmart is getting into surge pricing. Watch out for bacteria in Japan.
Ooh, French people are pooping in the Seine in protest of the Olympics?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Oh, and we need to do a Boeing update because their Starliner issues are intense. As we record this, there are 2 astronauts still stuck up there in the Starliner because Boeing can't figure out how to get it to work.
Oh, right. And we know that Boeing made some pretty heavy statements about whistleblowers recently.
And DOJ, I believe, is starting to look at them for criminal prosecution.
Yep. There's a lot in there.
If you're using titanium, it should be titanium. We're going to pause for a word from our sponsors. When we come back, there's something, I think multiple ones of us had us in here. There's a very interesting statement from the U.S. Surgeon General, which jibes with our earlier comments about social media as a dopamine casino.
Skibbity. All right. Yes, we are back. Skibbity, Giat, Wiz, Ennui in Ohio, Duke, Dennis. Did you play today? Wivy Dunn, Whizzing Up, Baby Gronk, Sussy, Impostu, Pibby Gwitch, and We Wife, Sigma, Alpha, Omega, Ma, Grindset, Andrew Tate, Goon Cave.
What?
Freddy Fazbear. Yeah,
What?
you heard me. That's right. That's right. I'm talking about look maxing. I'm talking about zesty poggers. I'm talking about Sylvester, Quandale, Dingle, Glizzy, Rose Toy, Anka Zone, Thug Shaker, Morbid Time, DJ Khaled, Sisyphus, Ocean Gate, Shadow Wizard, Money Gang. Ayo, the pizza here.
What is happening?
Sorry, guys. Just had a touch of the brain rot there. I don't know what any of that means. I don't know what any of that means. Oh, boy, guys. Yeah, so I have the benefit, I suppose, or curse, depending on where you stand, of having a 15-year-old kid and having being around kids also through their friendships and other friends I have who have younger kids, kind of getting a pretty broad picture of some of the internet meme culture of like my kids' generation and the one beneath it. And Gen Alpha, as it's known, really getting up to some very interesting, beyond absurdist like slang and lingo and meme worship, and a lot of it comes from streamers and Twitch stuff, which has never really been my thing.
Is it absurdist though? Sorry to interject. Is it absurdist, or is it simply because this is an outside looking in perspective?
Yes,
you know
I would argue it is absurdist, I think, and I think
it.
that's where the appeal comes from with the kids. I think they just like, to me, absurdist is things like Tim and Eric, awesome show, great job. It's like that kind of level of, which also is sort of meme-y and internet-y kind of in terms of like what it feels like it's mimicking or like the kind of content that we would see that, but like they're also like mimicking like old infomercials from the 90s. There's a certain quality of that VHS weird stilted acting kind of bad infomercial thing that's made its way onto the internet, has proliferated in memes, and has generated all of this crazy content. Of course, the biggest offender, I guess, is TikTok, because it's all about a short attention span theater kind of mentality. I just rattled off a bunch of these crazy, bizarro non sequiturs that all do have, for the most part, explanations. Like, for example, Riz is, short for charisma. It's how you, when you're looking good, a way of attracting a romantic partner. Only in Ohio is a thing. It's a meme that implies that strange events apparently only happen in Ohio. It's not good. Apparently Ohio is considered like lame or kind of milquetoast.
My son says we're going to Ohio all the time.
Exactly. So your son's totally in that same set as the twins that I'm referring to, Mike.
It's reached normcore status.
Right. It's interesting, but it's okay. This will probably be educational for you, Matt. You've probably heard the term Sigma. A Sigma is a term with a lot of these too. Even cross over into some of the kind of weird incel-y type men's rights type things. Like a Sigma male is a term describing sort of a lone wolf type who is successful but doesn't necessarily attach themselves to any kind of social norms or hierarchies. And you, of course, have an alpha, which is a dominant, and then a beta, which is, also been co-opted by certain other communities, like a beta cuck, etc. Point being, there's a term called brain rot that is used to describe, I guess, a state of being kind of like almost overwhelmed by all of this kind of content. You may have heard of Skibbity Toilet. It's the Skibbity dop dop yes meme.
Yes.
It's this weird little video with a dude's head popping out of a toilet, and now the kids say Skibbity. There's a dance. Everything's got a dance. The meme song is by Little Big, and there's multiple versions of it. And a lot of people have taken this stuff and made other short form, weirdo, non sequitur content. And the idea of being inundated with this stuff and maybe a little too obsessed with it, I guess, with the infinite scroll that we have on social media, is brain rot. And as it turns out, the Surgeon General and some other pretty significant authorities in medicine are starting to look at this and take it rather seriously. There's an article in the New York Times that came out recently by Jessica Roy, who's a Paris-based writer, called "If You Know What Brain Rot Means, You Might Already Have It." Subtitle is "A popular term captures the condition of being terminally online with humor and pathos." Example that she uses is, I've been watching so many TikToks, I have brain rot. And it's a term that's really only kind of come into the public kind of mainstream-ish consciousness in the last handful of years. Like, a lot of this stuff happens overnight. I swear. Even the term like on God and no cap, I didn't know until maybe a couple of years ago. And then all of a sudden it was everywhere. This stuff just kind of spreads like wildfire. So to Ben's point, the Surgeon General of the United States is looking at this as a legitimate medical concern, a legitimate kind of sociological breakdown in the youth, that they're getting this brain rot, and they're worried that it's literally causing them to be kind of zombified or in some way thrown into some kind of like fugue state, and therefore is recommending that through what would take an act of Congress to include warning labels, Surgeon General warning labels on many social media websites, and according to them, to regularly remind parents and adolescents that social media has not been proved safe. And it would require formal congressional approval. And this guy's name, by the way, is Vivek Murthy, who's the U.S. Surgeon General. And I don't know, this is sort of a two-pronged story. There's on the one hand the brain rot thing, and the fact that it's now being looked at and researched as a legitimate kind of psychological disorder that is, internet triggered. Dr. Michael Rich, who's a pediatrician at the Digital Wellness Lab at the Boston Children's Hospital, they have determined this to be considered a form of problematic interactive media use. Rich actually founded the Digital Wellness Lab. And he has this to say about just classifying brain rot as a way of describing what happens when you spend a lot of your time online and you have shifted your awareness over to the online space as opposed to in real life, and are filtering everything through the lens of what has been posted and what can be posted. He adds that many of his patients actually consider having this condition, I guess, to be a badge of honor. Like, how much screen time are you getting? Like, being terminally online is almost like a contest with some of these kids. And maybe that might seem ridiculous, but I think it is a particularly younger generation. Like, I know these two twins who are psychotically online. You take away their iPad for 5 seconds, they can't cope. It's literally the only way they know how to view the world. And the last point I'll make on the brain rot thing is that there's another school of thought that refers to this as a form of self-soothing, and that this type of behavior is also just kind of acting out in order to self-soothe, like people often do with drugs, self-medication they call that, because there's an underlying condition that isn't being addressed, whether it be some form of spectrum type condition, autism, whatever it might be, depression, what have you, that just isn't being addressed because the parents just shove the iPad into the baby's hands just to make them leave them alone for 5 minutes, So I don't know. Let's start with the warning. Is social media like cigarettes? And is a warning going to do a damn thing other than maybe let parents know, if they don't already know the internet is maybe not the best to have unfettered access to when you're 6 years old? Maybe, I don't know if a warning is going to help with those folks, but what do you guys think? Is that going to do anything? Is it that simple? Is the genie already out of the bottle?
So before I answer this question, I'd like to point people to this is the thing I was sending around when I first learned about the news on June 17th, 2024. It's a guest essay by Dr. Murthy himself in New York Times. And he has a line that really stood out to me. I'd like to read it here. it gets into poetry. It says the following, and this is a very short read. It's very good. It's high impact stuff. You should read it, folks, if you have an interest in this. He says the following, quote, "There is no seatbelt for parents to click, no helmet to snap in place, no assurance that trusted experts have investigated and ensured that these platforms are safe for our kids. They're just parents and their children trying to figure it out on their own, pitted against some of the best product engineers and most well-resourced companies in the world." I was like pumping my fist at the end of that, because that is very much true. Legislation lags behind technological innovation, and I don't think this is in any way some kind of political grandstanding. I would argue this is a legitimate concern. Something like this technology has not existed previously.
No, and I mean, and I think you're absolutely right, Ben. And I would argue that starting this conversation at that level of government where something can be done about it is seemingly to me a step in the right direction. But we also know that, the U.S. spending a whole lot of time targeting TikTok because of its Chinese ownership, while pretty much letting Twitter do whatever the F they want, including promoting, vehement racism, white nationalism, hardcore pornography, whatever, unfettered, hate speech. So this guy is obviously not coming down with an agenda. He's the Surgeon General. He doesn't really necessarily care about the political rhetoric.
I mean, his agenda is technically to keep people healthy and alive for longer.
It's a good one.
Right?
Yeah, Matt, you mentioned the boys talking about Ohio risen up and all that. Like, do you feel like with kids that have already had access to this stuff, is it too late? You can't, if you take it away from them, their heads will freaking explode.
I would say it's not too late. Humans are extremely adaptable. Children will get over things. I know I got over a great many things that didn't have to do with the internet.
That's true.
I just, I'm sure we all did. I don't know. I feel pretty strongly about it. Today, I literally bought my son a device that doesn't have internet access, but he can call me on it.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah. And I spent a lot of time and unfortunately money to make sure that it was a device that he could not access this stuff even if he wanted to, right? He couldn't get the drug no matter what.
He couldn't hack this device or root it.
Well, maybe if one day when he's old enough to hack the device, he'll probably have a device of his own that already has internet access because he'll need it for whatever school thing he's doing, right?
7.
He's 8.
It'd be pretty impressive if he did hack the device you got him.
Well, I mean, my devices are already hacked and I didn't do it, but it's all good. We'll figure that stuff out. But I wanted to give another quote here just with that stuff in mind. This is from The Atlantic writing about the New York Times piece.
Right. And
this is another writer who didn't write the Atlantic piece commenting on the New York Times piece. This writer's name is Jonathan Haidt, Haidt. And this is a great quote because this is how I feel. Quote, "We as a country are generally careful about the consumer products and medications that harm small numbers of children. Yet we have done nothing, absolutely nothing ever to protect children from the main consumer product they use every day, which is social media," which is, I think, guys, the problems with social media. Tell me if I'm wrong here. I think they're completely separate from the language kids are using that we would maybe, to Ben's point earlier, an outside perspective looking in, I thought about it for a while as we were talking there. I think you're absolutely right when it comes to the language, because that is, when I think about it more and more, it's the same thing we did. We've talked about this before on the show. In our generation, we would use phrases and stuff to be insular so that maybe the parents don't know exactly what we're talking about.
You guys are 100% right. I'm just saying the choices in the language are absurdist. There's a certain absurdist bent to the comedy and the humor, but you're absolutely right with the coded language. Also keep things from showing up in search terms, etc.
But the dangerous stuff with social media is the stuff that the three of us for sure experience when we're just interacting with other people. We're putting ourselves out there, hoping that people enjoy or like what we're doing. And when they don't, or if they're mean, it affects us, whether we want it to or not, right? Even if we can brush it off, it still hits, right? Even if you can take a punch, you're still taking a punch. Does that make sense?
And please do, folks, please do read that op-ed by the Surgeon General himself. And Matt, I think you make a beautiful point. I appreciate the backup on this, because there is the intergenerational aspect, right? You build community through the original technology of language. You see this in thieves' cant. You see this in demographic specific things. It's not inherently bad. It has simply been exacerbated by this new, previously non-existent technology. If there was social media in 1400s France, you know what I mean? History might have gone a different way, and we would have a lot more weird French terms.
Yeah.
Well, I think too that just the length of time the internet has been around and how much information is available to young people, I think it speaks volumes to the vast different parts of culture that get pulled from to make some of these terms, you know, like they're from all over the place. A lot of it's from like, you know, drag culture, slay or whatever, but there's a lot of terms that are borrowed from like hip hop. There's a lot of terms that are borrowed from, you know, just memes or things that come up or that like catchphrases that certain streamers say or things that happen in like Fortnite or whatever. It's just interesting the way this stuff kind of evolves like a virus. It's almost like these complex systems.
My son, really quickly, there's a cat who is living here right now, and I used the term to describe what the cat was doing. Instead of saying meow, her vocalization,
mewing?
I said mew. And my son said, that's not mewing, Dad. I was like, yeah, it is. And then he demonstrated what mewing is. And I was like, what? How? What? How? You're 8, my son. Anyway.
Kids know a lot more than you think they do. Yeah.
Yikes.
And that's some of the absurdest stuff too, because mewing, I'm doing it. It's just kind of like, think of a villain stroking their beard kind of while making a weird like blue steel, like from Zoolander face. Yeah. Kind of. It's like this Giga Chad kind of face, you know? It's like, I don't really even know where that comes from or what it refers to, but it's a thing. Yeah, it's really, really interesting. I do think that, you know, having a warning, at least it puts something out there like that parents, maybe if they're just totally in the dark, gives them access to the fact that, hey, from a place of authority, this is maybe not the best thing to let your kid do at an early age. What
if it was like, what was that campaign, the anti-smoking campaign from back in the day that was like, aimed directly at the kids, and it was cool. It was like
Joe Camel.
No,
the kids love Joe Camel.
No, it was the anti-smoking ad. It was the ones that were really like hip back in the day about
truth.
Don't smoke. Yeah, truth.
Yeah.
What if they used that kind of model and they used meme speak, like this of stuff we're talking about?
The anti-smoking campaign was paid by tobacco companies as part of legal
reparation.
So,
exactly.
So just get Meta to do it.
But what I'm saying is, what if you can make the messages super like that? What? This app is totally Ohio, or this app is in Ohio, so Joe Biden.
The Internet Today guys who cover the story as well pointed out, I can't remember which one of them said it, but you know, in Europe, pretty much everywhere except for in the United States, you buy a pack of cigarettes, it's got an image of a black lung on it. It has an image of someone who's had their leg amputated due to poor blood flow. It's got like children weeping over their intubated mommy or daddy in a hospital.
This is clearly a story that we hope resonates with you folks. Definitely resonates with us internally. I gotta say, Noel, my favorite example of those warning things in South Korea. Yeah. Every time I go, I see a warning pack. They have the pantheon of graphic pictures of physiological problems, but my favorite is the picture on the pack of a child looking unhappy and crying while taller parents are arguing and smoking. I feel like that's more effective, at least for that market. But the warning labels are important. And to your point, this is, at the very least, this is a step in thinking about things in a more serious way.
Absolutely, and I'm with you on the tall people smoking is the greatest deterrent of all, especially to children. But the Internet Today guys, the point that they made was, if you were going to do something like that with social media, it would need to be like an image of suicide or something. Like, what would be the smoking equivalent that you could shock kids into thinking twice before they jump down the social media rabbit hole. Essentially, the problem is that it makes you disconnected from society, and it can make you really depressed because you're viewing all of these other people that are better than you, smarter than you, better looking than you, more popular than you, etc., and it can send you down a rabbit hole. I'm grateful that my kid seems to have a decent head on their shoulders about it, and isn't as terminally online as some. So, small wins there. But I think this might be worth an episode unto itself, just this whole concept that we're talking about in this Gen Alpha phenomenon, and further exploring what could happen with a government intervention. We have heard, for example, Snapchat's already starting to self-impose some restrictions that could potentially protect young people. But anyway, let's take a quick break, and we'll hear a word from our sponsor, and then be back with another piece of strange news.
And we've returned, and we're doing a bit of a time machine jump here, boys. We are going back to 2022, December, in fact, to an unrelated CBS Evening News report covering the ADHD prescription drug shortage that was happening.
Time travel cue.
Yes, fingering.
All right, we're there, man.
We're back. Guys, remember the pandemic? It was only 2 and change years ago.
So tight.
It was only a decade ago, right?
So tight. I loved the mystery of going to the grocery store and everybody had about 2/3 of their face covered up. Eye contact had so much gravitas. And also
and
I'll say
eyebrows.
it. Yeah, very expressive. Everybody was Dwayne The Rock Johnson for a second. And I got to tell you, in these pandemic times, Matt, I loved it. I got so spoiled by not having to look at people's mouths. And I personally still rock a mask because I look better with 2/3 of my face covered up.
Disagree, sir, but
yes.
okay.
It's about how it makes you feel. We love
just
your
to put us all, our fellow conspiracy realists, in the moment. 2022. When will this end? Things are getting weird.
We're there, especially early on when there were intense travel restrictions.
Yeah,
and
not a lot of information.
Yeah, not a lot of information. Health concerns were very high, and there was a problem getting prescriptions. Not only was it impossible for a short time to go in to the doctor to get prescribed a specific drug, it was very difficult to get an appointment after that time for a pretty large window. So the U.S. government, the good old U.S. government, lifted a tiny little rule that required an in-person medical visit to a medical professional before a patient could be prescribed what they consider controlled substances. One of these controlled substances was ADHD prescription medications, such as amphetamine salts, or also known as Adderall.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's cool. That makes sense, right? Hey, I have this thing. I need a prescription for it. I need to be diagnosed with it, which is a big deal. That's a big deal. So to get one of these drugs, a doctor has to say, hey, you need one of these drugs.
In the U.S.
In the United States. And they do that through assessing you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before, they had to see you in person. Now, after this restriction was lifted, you could get an online appointment. And
telehealth is what
a telehealth,
call it, right?
exactly.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A medical professional could look at you through the camera and go, I think this person needs Adderall.
And I've done, just not to make this about me, I have had those telehealth conversations, and I understand the skepticism when I'm thinking, okay, I get it. Between the two of us, one is a doctor, but I also use Zoom pretty frequently, and I'm not sure how good your spidey sense is, man.
Yeah. Well, especially for something like ADHD, right?
Right, which is an internal mechanism. Right?
It requires quite a bit of discussion. I mean, you would listen to a patient as a medical professional, but also watch them and see their mannerisms. And a lot of that I would guess you could diagnose or look at over a camera. But I think there's little things that would be missed. And there's potential for someone to try and get over on a medical professional to get a drug that they don't need prescribed, but they want, right? Because medications like Adderall and other stimulants like that can be abused.
Exams are coming up, etc.
Well, yeah, they can be used for a lot of different things, either as a studying drug, which was very popular and is still popular, or as a party drug. as a let's stay up. It's a stimulant, not like, but not unlike cocaine, right? It's like one of those drugs. It's rides the line there sometimes, and it depends on who you are and what's going on internally, how it could be used or abused. All right, so that's back in 2022. At the time, CBS Evening News was reporting on how capitalism did its thing in response to these restrictions being lifted, and companies like Cerebral and Dun Global and countless others, they popped up, or they pivoted, let's say, to begin trying to prescribe as many people as they could Adderall and other stimulants.
Because capitalism is a drug that sells you drugs.
That's right.
It's the drug that keeps on drugging.
And then it goes into other countries and finds the stuff that you need to make the drugs and secures that and then brings it home.
A little bit of democracy. Yeah.
It's fine. It's fine.
You get in
It's fine.
situations. Yeah.
It's fine. So back then in 2022, at the very end of it, there's this person named Kyle Robertson who was for quite a time and officially on paper forever the founder of Cerebral, which was one of these companies that was doing this. And if you watch this video, it's a short video and a pretty long report out of CBS Evening News. They discuss how this person was ousted at the company, this Kyle Robertson of Cerebral. But he made some statements before that whole thing happened, and I think right after it happened, alleging that, quote, major investors pushed for increased prescriptions of Adderall. So it was the money that was going into the company or the people who were providing the money for the company saying, hey, we need you to up these prescriptions, guys.
That's not how it's supposed to work.
Oh, yeah. Well, basically sell more drugs.
Or is it exactly how it's supposed to work?
Well, here's where it gets weird and how we get to our main story for this segment. So that's Cerebral Health, I think it's called. That was back in 2022. We are jumping to June 18th, 2024, when there's another telehealth company that just got in big trouble and there were arrests made. Let's quickly just talk about how weird that is. Generally, when we bring these stories to you, if it's about a corporation or a big company, something that has a lot of profits that could be potentially helpful, let's say, for the bottom line of the old GDP thing in the US, the company gets slapped with a fine because Uncle Sam gets his cut, and then that's it. They don't have to say, hey, we did a bunch of wrong things. Nobody goes to jail. It's just, hey, y'all did a bad thing. You're not supposed to do that. Give us some money. Okay.
And if the punishment for a crime is a fee, then ultimately the crime is being poor. That's just true.
Yeah. And it's a cost of doing business, as we've said numerous times, right?
Yeah. And this is what I really appreciate about the point you're building here, man, is that we have seen numerous other instances wherein the individuals responsible for the commission of the crime are not themselves punished as human individuals. Shout out the Sackler family, right? And so this case is different in that there are decision makers who are in criminal trouble, not civil court or anything like that, correct?
Absolutely. I'm going to give you the headline of this article, and then we'll jump into the specifics. The article that you can find right now, Telehealth CEO charged in alleged $100 million scheme to provide, quote, easy access, unquote, to Adderall and other stimulants. This is out of CBS News, June 18th. And in this article, it describes how two of the top people, the CEO and I guess it's the clinical president or the head doctor of this company, were both arrested. And they have been charged with some pretty serious crimes, some allegations that the Department of Justice is saying, these are not good. I'll just give you from the article here, the two individuals. Ruthia He, Ruthia He. This is the founder of Dun Global, Doneglobal. This person was arrested in Los Angeles. And this is over allegations that she, I'm going to list them off. 1, participated in the distribution of Adderall over the internet. 2, submitted false and fraudulent claims for reimbursements. And 3, obstructed justice. The company's clinical president, a separate person named David Brody, was also arrested, this time in San Rafael, California. Same charges. So those are the two main arrests that have occurred, which is already a big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is this what you might call a pill mill? Is this similar to that
Yes.
kind of? Okay.
Pill mills, exactly. At least according to the Department of Justice and Ann Milgram, who is, she's the DEA administrator, currently the Drug Enforcement Agency administrator. This company was basically just trying to get as many people as they could hooked on Adderall, and not via a full-on prescription that you would get from a doctor if you went in. It was selling people monthly subscriptions to a service wherein they can just get Adderall. Does that make sense? The difference between a prescription and a subscription?
It's called being a drug dealer. I mean, that's
because a prescription is prescribed for a defined window of time. A subscription expires when you decide not to pay for the fee.
And I have a prescription, low dose prescription for some anxiety medication, and it has 0 refills every single round, right?
Yeah.
So one refill lasts an entire month, and then the doctor has to call it in every time. And after a certain number of those, I'm required to go in for a visit for them to check up on me and make sure that I'm still worthy of the anxiety medication or whatever it is. But it's a way of keeping track and checking on you and making sure you're not just willy-nilly popping these things like, jujubes.
Well, and anxiety medications, very similar to ADHD medications, can have some pretty gnarly effects, especially
qualities too.
Especially when they combine, and can be extremely addictive.
Deleterious effects, addiction spirals. Yeah. Check out our Nootropics episode as well.
We'll talk about that a little bit too in next listener mail episode.
Yep. I want to make sure we get this out there and everybody understands. The company is Done Global Incorporated. DONE Global Incorporated.
Oh, they certainly are DONE.
Well, I don't know. If you go to their website, it looks like everything's still going. They've been arrested. Bad stuff's happening, but as of right now, they're in litigation or whatever,
Right. And also, again, getting in trouble as a corporation is different from if you are a John or Jane Doe schmo and you get in trouble. I think one important point before we really drive this home, Matt, is we haven't said it yet, but this medication is mission critical and life changing for many people. It's not everybody is out there recreationally doing Adderall. Some people need it to function at a competent level, and it has improved their lives to a massive degree.
And it has a completely different effect for those people. The people that are just taking it recreationally or to get an edge or whatever, it's like an amphetamine. But for people that really need it for ADHD or true whatever, similar condition, it calms them down. I've always found that to be an interesting paradox, but that's true of a lot of drugs. Like if you're using it for the right reasons, it's different. The effects are different.
Absolutely. I know several people very close to me who use that medication because they need it. And since they need it, they see a psychiatrist who helps them make sure they still need it and all of that. I mean, it's exactly what you were talking about, Noel. There's a medical professional who is there for them, who is providing that service and taking literally medical care of them by providing this stuff.
Combined with secondary treatments and mitigation strategies like meditation, mindfulness exercises, which everybody should be attempting. Listening, like active listening exercises are big for ADHD as someone who's struggled with it. It's not, like a waiting for the turn to get the dopamine and talking kind of thing, and that I think really expands the efficacy of this kind of medication.
Fully. And that's, I think, why DEA Administrator Ann Milgram and, the DOJ is so kind of upset at these folks who are taking this and turning it on its head to turn a profit, right? I'm going to read just a quick statement here from DEA Administrator Ann Milgram. She released this on June 14th after the arrests were announced by the DOJ. It's kind of long, guys, but I think this just drives it home of what's happening. The defendants allegedly preyed on Americans and put profits over patients by exploiting telemedicine rules that facilitated access to medications during the unprecedented COVID-19 public health emergency. Instead of properly addressing medical needs, the defendants allegedly made millions of dollars by pushing addictive medications. In many cases, done global prescribed ADHD medications when they were not medically necessary. And this is important. The allegations are that they knew these medications were not necessary, but there was a push from above to get as many, quote, monthly subscriptions as they possibly could. And all of these medical providers, because they did actually hire medical providers to do these telehealth, these interviews basically, and they were pushed and pressured to give the green light to a subscription rather than, do anything else. Oh, and they were also pushed from above to only have one meeting, one medical visit.
Right. Shake and bake.
I do wonder if there's something in the way they talk to their patients or the boxes they tick on their intakes that cover their butts in some way. Because I described my situation with the anxiety stuff, but when I go into the office, they don't like probe me about it. They don't really test anything. They just look at me and make sure I'm not cuckoo bananas, and then they give me my script, and even getting it in the first place, wasn't insanely hard. I'm not saying that I'm going in and trying to, fleece doctors for prescription meds, but I just said, I've been experiencing some pretty significant stresses with work and just as simple as that. They go, here you go, my boy, have this low dose of alprazolam or whatever. So I would argue this isn't that far off from the way the model's supposed to work, but there is a little extra level of oversight in the legitimate form. I just wonder what they're asking to cover their butts, because they have to have some on paper reason they're giving these out, or do they just throw caution to the wind and not give a flip?
They have a medical professional make an assessment. Right?
That's what I mean, but it's up to their discretion,
Yeah,
and
but
they just
once
have to defend themselves, I guess.
Once you have that as the company, I'm assuming they just chose to say this is good enough, right? It's
you
like
set a precedent.
It's like sometimes when we're performing interviews or something and we're doing it more man on the street style, officially we need to get some document signed that says, hey, this is who I am and I give you permission to use this interview. But if we can't get that, or we don't have one of those on us, or we're in a rush, you can do something where a human being looks into the camera and records themselves saying, hi, I am X, and you can use this footage of me in your interview. That way it covers our butts if we ever use that interview, right?
And it's also ethical for us to do that at the end so they know what they're agreeing to share.
Yes, absolutely.
And the butt covering involves in case they change their mind or regret something they said. But even in those situations, we're more likely to work with someone and be like, we're not going to drag you or whatever.
Exactly. But just to take this back to the top one more time to 2022, in this statement from Ann Milgram, she puts this towards the end. There was a shortage of Adderall and other stimulants in 2022. The FDA issued a notice about this. It was a big deal. It was all over the news. We even mentioned it, I think, back then. And this pill mill style thing that was not necessary anymore, because in 2022, I don't know if y'all remember, we could drive places again. We could go to places again. And if a human being needed to go get a prescription, you could go see a medical professional. Doesn't mean it wasn't necessary for a lot of people, right? But it does mean that the vast majority of humans didn't need or have those restrictions anymore.
Right. But another thing we could argue, we see this in other industries. Prices spike during similar supply chain issues in the pandemic. However, all that really happened is corporations figured out they could shift the Overton window. The prices didn't go down. So if you have a rule that's supposed to be a limited time rule for a global catastrophe, why would you dial it back, as the corporates like to say, if it is advantageous to you? That's the pickle. Right? That's the bag of badgers here. Why would you step that back? You could even, if you want to play along at home, if you have a doctor that you feel may be somehow incentivized to go a little hard on stuff that might be a solution you ask yourself about after a couple of other interventions, then there's nothing wrong with asking the doctor, are there steps between this, like steps between ADHD or, heavy psychoactive meds, depending on how you feel about your doctor. You could even ask, have you been in any way incentivized to immediately recommend this?
It seems like if they are, they wouldn't tell you. I know there are honorable people in the medical profession. I know there are dishonorable people in the medical profession, as there are in any profession. But I just, you got me thinking, guys, how many things just kind of stayed around after COVID? Like, it just became the new norm, like not going into the office. And then there became all of these kind of mitigating efforts to try to push back the clock and make things like they used to be. But it's really hard once you got that critical mass. So now you do have companies like Hims and Hers. I mean, there have always been prescription mail things, but it seems like now it's really taken off. And we're also going to get into in another discussion soon about how this supply chain shortage thing for drugs like Ozempic and Mounjaro are now affecting the folks that have needed those drugs for a long time for reasons other than, dropping some pounds.
Yeah, again, the Overton window of normalization. And Matt, I didn't want to derail us here, but I feel what you're saying, like the larger context of this. If anything, the scary aspect of this story is the extraordinary part being individual human beings were arrested, got in trouble with criminal court. That is by far, unfortunately, the most anomalous part of this.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. This comes from court documents, and this is how I want to end it, guys. These individuals in the company are accused of structuring the company's platform to, quote, facilitate access to Adderall and other stimulants, including by limiting the information available to the prescribers,
Right.
the people who bought the monthly subscription, instructing done prescribers, these are the medical professionals, to prescribe Adderall and other stimulants, even if the done member did not qualify, like according to the assessment, did not qualify, and by mandating that those medical professionals, those prescribers, in their initial encounters, limited them to 30 minutes or less. So literally, you've got 30 minutes. Make sure this person gets an Adderall prescription.
Make sure they walk out the door with it.
Mm-hmm. And are paying us monthly because we need to make over $100 million, at least according to the documents there. Good golly. No thanks.
Yeah, right. I mean, and it is a function of several active conspiracies, right? The privatization, the monetization, commodification of basic human rights like healthcare. It's something, Matt, you tell us, is this something that you think will set precedent for other similar activities in the world of medicine?
Yeah, I think it's already happening. And this is one of many companies that are doing this precise thing, maybe not in the same way, right? Maybe they are actually attempting to get people prescribed the medications that they need. But kind of what you're saying, the window is open now, right? And anybody with enough capital to get in there and start a company and, tackle this stuff and capture it can do that.
But on the flip side, do you think with this attention being brought to this case, if others are going to start coming out of the woodwork and there's going to be more of a crackdown on this type of behavior? Is this like just the first step in a series of chess moves that ultimately could topple this kind of a structure?
Well, we were talking about how Cerebral got in big trouble for doing something very similar to this. And I think ADHD medications are just one of those things that can be used in this way right now. There's going to be others, and there have been others, I'm sure. I just don't know them right now. Guys, this is the response from Dun Global. Really quickly, they strongly disagree with the criminal charges filed last week against their founder, which are based on events that principally occurred between 2020 and 2023. Since our founding, guys, they've worked to make mental health care accessible for tens of thousands of Americans trapped in a spiraling national crisis. Dun Global will continue to operate and do everything in their power to ensure that tens of thousands of Americans that rely on us do not lose access to their mental health care
by paying their subscription.
Well, guys, I don't know about you, but I take them at their word. I'm satisfied. I think we should move on. No, I'm joking.
Really? I think you're right.
And with this, folks, we are ending our exploration of strange news for the moment. We will return with even more bizarre things in the future. We can't wait for you to join us. We want to hear your thoughts. We always get fantastic feedback from our fellow listeners. You are the most important part of the show. Just going to get in front of the emails real quick, running behind. Got to write to several people in place of a night walk this evening. But there is some breaking news that happened as we were recording. The U.S. Supreme Court just today struck down the anti-corruption law that makes it a crime to take gifts from donors.
Yeah, who needs anti-corruption? Be corrupt. It's fine.
Yeah, it's a non-surprising 6-3 vote. Shout out to our Georgia boy, Clarence. I hope he writes I hope he writes a poetic defense of recreational vehicles. But
he loves those vacations, doesn't he, boys?
RVs are so cool, though. Objectively, I'm with him on that part. But again, more news to come. We can't wait to explore some even stranger things with you in upcoming episodes and our weekly listener mail segment. Join the cause, folks. We want you. Let us know what's on your mind. We try to be easy to find online.
For the love of God, find us on the internet at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on X, FKA, Twitter, on Facebook, where we have our Facebook group. Here's where it gets crazy, on YouTube, where we have video content rolling at you on the regular. On TikTok and Instagram, we are Conspiracy Stuff Show.
Guys, I forgot to add one line in here from this. I got to tell you this. This is the icing on the cake. According to Dun Global, they're going to continue to, quote, support our clinicians as they exercise independent clinical judgment. Passing the buck, boys.
Ooh, boy.
Call us if you want to. Our number is 1-833-STDWYTK. When you call in, you've got 3 minutes to leave a voicemail message. Please give us a cool nickname. Doesn't matter what it is. Make it as awesome as you want. Just not something about Ohio or Joe Biden or Skippity.
No, those are on the table. Those are on the table.
Okay. Do let us know at some point in that message if we can use your name and message on the air. If you've got more to say than can fit in a voicemail, why not instead send us a good old-fashioned email? We are
the entities that read every piece of correspondence we receive. Be well aware, folks, sometimes the void writes back, so send a message into the dark and then check your email later. Conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.